Good night, everyone. All right. Okay. Sean said he's about to drive, but good night, everyone. Okay. I want to welcome everyone to the Healthy Reset. And we have a very informative program for many of us who are going through. And good night, Romani. And everyone who is going through, or know anyone who is going through, Miss Atwell, good night as well. The topic for tonight is how good gut health, good night, can improve menopause. How good gut health can improve menopause. So because we've always been hearing about how our gut has to do a lot with how we feel. So what if I told you that your gut, not only your hormones, which we deal with on many times, might be the real mastermind behind your menopause symptoms? Yes, that same gut that digests all our food, that houses billions of bacteria, and probably doesn't get much attention unless it's causing some trouble, may actually be calling all the shots when it comes to how we feel and our mood swings and things like that during peri-menopause and post-menopause. When it comes to things like hot flashes, weight gain, mood swings, and even how we sleep, or I should say how we don't sleep when the night comes. So tonight on the Healthy Reset, we are diving into the surprising connection between the gut, microbiome, and menopause. Now, because this journey through midlife is not just about estrogen, it's really and truly, it's about the ecosystem inside our guts. Yes, the one that could be making your symptoms better or making it worse. For about 20 years now, I've been dedicated my life to women's health, because besides being a registered nurse, I'm a midwife and also a sexual health nurse. So my whole existence professionally has been dedicated to the general public and later on in life to women in particular, particularly women at this phase in our existence. So I've seen and experienced firsthand how menopause can impact everything from weight to our energy levels. That's why we've created a program to help us women to reclaim our health and through natural means. I'm not just a nurse, I'm a guide. So we've helped women lose weight, including myself, balance their hormones, and to rediscover the joy of living through this phase and afterward. And we are confident that we can help you too. Imagine waking up feeling rested, energized, and excited to start your day. Imagine fitting into your favorite clothes again, feeling confident and strong. Just picture yourself navigating through menopause with grace, feeling in control, and truly looking radiant on the outside and feeling healthy and strong in the inside. So in our Reclaim Your Radiance program, which we want to offer to everyone, we help women naturally balance their hormones, shed unwanted weight, and find exercises that they love. And I want to emphasize that. Exercises that they love, not what people tell you that you should do. Need to find exercises that we love. So you deserve to strive through this transition, but doing it your way with our guidance. So, but more about this later. So stay till the end and we will have amazing surprise for you as we continue. So today we'll unpack the science, speak to the leading expert in our community, which is Dr. Z, share real life stories and give you practical, gut-friendly strategies you can start using now, yes, today. So let's get into it. So before we connect the dots between the gut and menopause, let's ground ourselves in what menopause actually is. Now, from those of us who've been listening to the program for a while, and they know basically what it is. But for those of us too who are now joining and who are now learning about this phase or this transition in life, there are actually three main stages during the menopausal transition: perimenopause, menopause, and post-menopause. So perimenopause is the transitional phase. It can begin as early as in your 40s. I've met women who have transitioned in their 40s, also many as well, a bit of as well in their late 30s, and some as early as their mid 30s. Yes, I said mid 30s. I've met one or two women who have transitioned that early, and even without having a hysterectomy or anything like that, that is the time they say, a lot of them say the ladies in their family start to go through menopause. So it can begin that early or even earlier. So your hormone levels start to fluctuate, cycles become irregular, and then the symptoms start to come on. So that is one of the earliest signs. You start to realize that your period is not coming the way it used to come, as timely as it used to. Some people own becomes heavier. Some people own start to skip, so it varies, and then other symptoms come into play. Now, the menopausal aspect of the menopausal transition is actually diagnosed when you've gone through 12 months consecutively, or as we say in this part of the world, 12 straight months without a menstrual bleed, without a period. And that's, at that time, that is what we call the menopausal time. And anything after that is what we call post-menopause. That anything that comes after that 12 months without seeing your monthlies. So common symptoms include, and not limited to it, they include hot flashes, brain fog, vaginal dryness, mood swings, low sex drive, sleep disruption, changes in weight. All of this is largely due to the shifting levels of estrogen and progesterone. Now, traditionally, we've looked at these symptoms and reached hormonal solutions like hormonal replacement therapy. And for many women, it is helpful and necessary. But here's the shift. What if we've only been looking at one part of the puzzle? What if there's another system, one just as powerful, that's working behind the scenes? So let's talk about our guts. Inside our guts, there is a whole world of life that is taking place in that area of our body. Inside your gut is a bustling community of over 100 trillion microorganisms. I call them the little people. Now, this is your gut microbiome, your internal ecosystem made up of bacteria. It is made up of viruses, of fungi, and other microbiomes, and other microbes. So we often think of the gut as just a digestive organ. The food goes through there, the body uses what it wants, and then it's expelled or excreted. But it's much more than that. It regulates actually our immunity, our mood, the amount of inflammation that we have in our system, and yes, our hormones. So there's a lesser known group of gut bacteria called estrobolome. These bacteria have one specific job, and that one specific job is to metabolize and regulate estrogen. So you see where we are coming from here. You see we are building here. So there's a lesser known group, that group called the estrobolome, right? That is their job, to metabolize and regulate estrogen. Now, when your gut is in balance, these bacteria to help maintain our estrogen levels. But when your gut is out of balance, as in many of us will experience, it can lead to something called estrogen dominance or estrogen deficiency, both of which can worsen menopausal symptoms. Another layer is inflammation. Now, a compromised gut can lead to chronic low-grade inflammation, which is like an invisible fire that can affect everything from our joints to sleep, our sleep patterns, even affecting our mental health. So the gut microbiome is not just a side player in menopause, it's hormonal, actually, the hormonal control center of the body. So we've seen women resolve chronic hot flashes simply by healing the gut. This is a study done by Dr. Elaine Foster, who is a functional medicine specialist and a woman's health expert. So Dr. Z, can you explain what the gut biome actually is and why it's now being called our second brain? So ladies and gentlemen, I'm inviting Dr. Z to come on and answer that question for us. So welcome.
Good evening, good evening, good evening, everyone. Happy to be here again. As you know, me and Marie are really involved in this wonderful space, helping you ladies through this beautiful change. So question is, what is the gut microbiome? Or what is this called a second brain? I'm sure you've heard that before. You know, there's big advertisements out there talking about that second brain. So let's dive into it. First off, it is a collection of trillions of microorganisms. And I said trillions, not billions, not millions, but trillions. And most of it is actually just bacteria, but very good bacteria for you. And it has a real effect on how you feel, right? But it also has viruses, fungi, protozoa, and archaea, right? And these all live in the intestinal tract, right? Particularly in the large intestines. So these microorganisms, right? They outnumber human cells. Some experts say 10 to 1, others say 1.3 to 1. But still, imagine trillions and they outnumber your normal cells. So that's the first thing. It's a huge group of organisms, but they serve an amazing purpose. And we'll get into that a little bit later. They possess 100 times more genes than the entire human genome, right? And that's what makes it a genetic powerhouse. And this is why it's called the microbiome. As you can tell, microorganisms in a biome, which is basically like a biosphere, right? If you've ever seen those movies. So what does it do? I'm sure that's a question coming up. Why do I need all this bacteria and viruses and protozoa and all these things growing in my gut? Well, here's the thing. We can't break down complex carbohydrates. I'm sure you've seen cows and sheep and goats chewing excessively over and over, it's chewing away. The fibers and carbohydrates are extremely tough and extremely hard to break down. So how these animals used to break it down, they first use a mechanical method, which is chewing on it consistently, and they use bacteria. Now, we don't possess all the bacteria they possess to break it down into usable usable nutrients, but we do have bacteria that do produce enzymes that can digest this, right? And this creates short chain fatty acids, things like butyrate, acetate, and propionate. Now, this sounds all sciencey and stuff like that. But what this does, it provides energy for the colon cells. Those are the cells that make up the lining of the gut. It reduces inflammation. Big thing in this. And it improves insulin sensitivity. Yes, there are insulin producing cells in your gut that can help you maintain your blood sugar levels, right? They're also important in vitamin and hormone production. Without a good gut microbiome, things like vitamin K and vitamin B aren't synthesized. And if you don't know, those hormones are extremely important, especially to the menopausal woman, right? So you're talking about folate, biotin, riboflavin, and it helps convert inactive hormones into active forms. And this is important for, guess what? Estrogen metabolism. Wow, did we even know our gut was involved in estrogen metabolism? This is how important this microbiome is. So, and here's another thing. It's immune system regulation. So 70% of our immune system resides in the gut. 70%, folks, 70%, right? That's a huge number. So guess what? If you're messing with your gut, you're affecting your microbiome. And I don't know why my camera is not focusing, but that's okay. Right, so the microbiome trains the immune system to distinguish between friend and foe. And I saw somebody in the chat mentioned lactose intolerance. That's a friend or foe moment. And if you've never had it before, all of a sudden you have it, you see what I mean. A diverse microbiome protects against autoimmune disorders and allergies and chronic inflammation. Right? One of them I always question is the peanut allergies we see all over the place today, and all these new allergies that we see popping up. Poor gut microbiome, right? And the last line of defense, it is a pathogen defense. Imagine all this stuff is entering your system through the mouth, which is the beginning of the gut, by the way, and it's passing through this open space. So your line of defense starts there and ends there. It prevents it from going any further. So it prevents harmful bacteria from entering the resources. It produces antimicrobial compounds, and it maintains something called a gut barrier. So hands up if you ever heard the term leaky gut. Yes, I've heard it tons of times. It's all over the internet. The leaky gut, where toxins of undigested food particles enter the bloodstream. Crazy, isn't it? So then what is a gut-brain connection? We mentioned, the gut microbiome, the second brain. What do they mean by the second brain? So this is a concept that refers to the gut-brain axis, a bidirectional communication network linking your central nervous system and your enteric nervous system that later they often call the second brain. Now, I want everybody to say this fast backwards. That's a mouthful, isn't it? So, what is the enteric nervous system? These are neurons, 100 to 500 million neurons embedded in the gut wall. These control the digestive process independently of the brain. In other words, the gut has its own nervous system, and it can influence your mood, your behavior. Everybody ever know that what we call in the Caribbean the postprandial depression, where you eat a heavy meal? I don't want to say the word. It ends with itis, right? But the postprandial depression, everybody ever know about that? Where you feel completely like you want to fall asleep after lunch because of that heavy meal. It affects your behavior. And this is done through the vagus nervous system, and it can be severed, right? It's a neurotransmitter production. The gut microbiome helps produce or modulates several hormones. We're just going to go through a few of them. There are many, many more, but we're going to mention the most common ones. Everybody knows about serotonin, right? There's dopamine, which gives you pleasure and reward. There's GABA, which is a calming neurotransmitter. It makes you feel all zen, right? And then it's acetylcholine, which is important for memory and cognition. In other words, it helps you have a clear memory, able to articulate what you want to say, right? And of course, previously we mentioned the vagus nerve. This is a huge nerve, one of the main nerves in the gut-brain axis, and this sends information from the gut to the brain and back. So that these microbiomes can talk, and it's a chemical messenger system. What does this do? It affects mood, anxiety, cognition, stress response. And we'll get a little bit more into that a little bit later. So, what does the gut biome and hormone balance have to do? Have to do with each other. So this is important for women, especially going through menopause. There's something called the estrobolome. Another mouthful. Yes, we love big words in medicine, right? It's a specific part of the microbiome responsible for metabolizing estrogen. Remember I mentioned that earlier? Estrogen in the gut. Who knew? Right? So a healthy estrobolome. Say that out loud, faster. Estrobolome. Right? Yeah, that's a hard word to say. Maintains a proper estrogen level. So imagine. So it prevents something called estrogen dominance, which has been linked to PMS, polycystic ovaries, endometriosis, and menopausal symptoms. That's when there's too much estrogen and it's going overwhelming the system. And it causes something else. It helps with something else called dysbiosis, which is an imbalance in the microbiome. This leads to recirculation of estrogen in the body, which increases the risk of the hormonal imbalances, weight gain, and mood disorders. So that extra weight you put on during pregnancy or during menopause, this, you now see where it's coming from. It's not just you eating what you're eating, but this imbalance. And during menopause and perimenopause, these hormone shifts can cause a change in the composition of microbiome and lead to digestive issues, insulin resistance, weight gain, and one person mentioned a type of inflammation, lactose intolerance, right? So this is really essential for women, especially those over the age of 40 and entering the perimenopause phase. What happens with an unhealthy gut? I mean, I'm sure that question is popping up in your mind. Why is he sharing all this information with me? What I want to know, really what happens? So here it is. This imbalance causes anxiety, depression, brain fog. You ever try to remember something, you just can't get the memory to come back? Or you wake up in the morning, you just can't concentrate? That's brain fog. It leads to things like obesity, metabolic syndrome, which is a syndrome involving hypertension, high lipids or high cholesterol, and diabetes, right? It causes autoimmune disorders. It causes IBS, IBD, leaky gut, chronic inflammation, and it causes hormonal balances and menstrual irregularities. Do we see now why the gut is so vitally important, and a healthy gut is so important to you? So, why is it called a second brain? Let's go through it. It has its own nervous system, right? It produces its own neurotransmitters and sends and receives brain signals through the vagus nerve. It adapts behavior. In other words, food cravings. The microbiome can control food cravings. And it stores memory of immune threats. So it knows what bacteria have come before and it's ready to protect you. But if you have an inflamed gut, an unhealthy gut, the gut can't do this work and this leads to problems, right? So it's just not, the gut is not just a passive digestive organ. It's intelligent, it's interactive, and it affects everything from our emotions to our immunity, hormones to metabolism. All right, so hopefully this information can help you in understanding how your gut goes. Maria, back to you.
Thank you, Dr. Khan, for that very informative bit of information there. So let's link again back to what Dr. Khan just said. And we're gonna hit another organ there that is linked to what he just spoke about. So we want to look at the liver here. And I want to say, what does the liver now has to do with all of this science? Now, we're not just talking about the science of the connection of with the gut that was just spoken about by Dr. Khan. Now, let's talk estrogen recycling now. So your liver is the organ that sends the used estrogen to the gut. So That is the organ that sends all the used estrogen to the gut to be eliminated. But however, if your gut bacteria are imbalanced, some of that estrogen gets reabsorbed into your bloodstream, and instead of being excreted out of your system, now this leads to what we call recirculation. And for some, it worsens symptoms like bloating, irritability, breast tenderness. Anybody could relate to anything like this? I can. So now let's look at the gut-brain axis. That's the direct connection between your gut and your brain. So when your gut is off, basically it affects your mood, your memory, and your focus. Hence the reason for the brain fog and all the mood swings. Even everyday things seem funny. You feel foggy. You're low for no particular reason. It's your gut to blame. And what about weight gain? A diverse microbiome helps regulate metabolism and the fat storage. So when you have too much of one thing, it affects the whole system. So it's a balance. So, but a sluggish, imbalanced gut slows down everything. And that's why the same habits that worked for us when we are in our 30s suddenly stop working when we are in our 40s and in our 15s. So let's not forget sleep. Gut inflammation can interfere with melatonin production and cortisol regulation. So no wonder why so many menopausal women lie awake at 3 a.m. watching the ceiling or on your phone, like what I do at times. So that tells you a lot. So I was doing all the right things. There's a real case life study, a 52-year-old lady, and she was saying I was doing all the right things, eating clean, exercising, praying, meditating, but nothing helped. Then a friend suggested that I look at my gut health. I started to use fermented food and a quality probiotic. Within 3 weeks, my hot flashes were cut in half and I was sleeping through the night. I felt like I'd finally found the missing piece of the puzzle. So the fix. So how we fix this? So how do we actually support the guts? We can start with food. Now, another example of a very balanced way of living that we can use, which can do all the necessary things to balance the gut, is the Mediterranean diet. And we did actually a topic on the Mediterranean diet. I think about some weeks ago, we did that. Now, the Mediterranean diet is one of the most studied and the gut-friendly diets that there is available in the whole wide world. Lots of vegetables, fruits, legumes, olive oil, fermented foods like yogurt, kefir, sauerkraut, all these things, top foods that can help the gut. Prebiotics. Now, these are fibers that you need to give your gut, which is to give your gut the good bacteria, which is foods like prebiotics, like onions, garlic, leeks, bananas, asparagus, right? When you could get your hand on it in this part of the world, the asparagus in particular. You see that I see it off and on sometimes in Massy and some other groceries and health stores. We have probiotics. These are what we call live bacteria found in fermented foods or the supplement that I take, which is the probiotic supplement. And when I can get the sauerkraut, I use it as much as I could. Another gut helper is hydration, hydration is essential for moving things along and not letting things or food remain stagnant and keeping our digestive system working very smoothly. So hydration, a lot of fluid, water is very important. What about fiber? Yes, fiber keeps our guts motility in check and supports the amount of estrogen that we eliminate. What should we avoid? Excess sugar. And we know, yes, people say we know that there is sugar in just about everything. But we are talking about not just fruits, because we know the fruits are accompanied by fiber. We are talking about the added on. Example, cakes, biscuits, cookies, the juices. You get where I'm coming from, the sugary breakfast cereals, all these added on sugars we are talking about, simple, what we call basically simple carbs. So excess sugar and ultra processed foods as well. So all of these things can add and cause the gut to go off balance, right? So we know that there are some foods that are just over processed, they're so processed that they kill out all the good qualities in the food, and we just leave like the shell, like certain type of rice that we use, right? Like, you know, they're not, they take out everything, all the good stuff, and they just leave it with the bare minimal. Example, in case in point, white flour, ultra processed, chronic antibiotic use without probiotic support. You know, sometimes we do have to use an antibiotic, but if we every time we get a infection or something, we go to antibiotic and we don't use probiotics to put in back into our system, that can cause also an imbalance in our guts. So here is the myth-busting segment here. Drinking a bottle of kombucha every day won't fix everything. Probiotics are helpful, but they need to be part of a broader spectrum and a more consistent strategy. Question, Dr. Z, again. How does inflammation in the gut translate into sleep problems or weight gain for women going through menopause?
All right, great question. Thank you for that, Maria. So we mentioned earlier, we talked about gut inflammation, right? And what happens when a lining of the gastrointestinal tract becomes irritated and damaged? This can be caused by poor diets. So what causes this irritation and damage? And we're going to get to why it affects your sleep and why it can affect many other parts of your daily routine. So poor diet. What is poor diet? Highly processed foods, right? You've been hearing all about those, but what are they? And we don't realize we have quite a few of them right in our own homes, right? Things like of excessive sugar. Not that sugar is entirely bad, but too much of it is a bad thing. So do you know how much sugar you should be is your limit for taking a day? Alcohol use, right? All of those things can lead to, it can be poor diet, right? Not saying that a glass of wine every once in a while is a bad thing, but excessive use again, right? Another big part of the inflammation, stress. Are you constantly stressed out at work, at home? Are you constantly stressed out about finances, all those things, you know? How are you going to pay the bills in a month? And you might think those stresses are not having an impact to you, but it's affecting your gut, and that is leading to multiple things happening. Medication and antibiotics. Are you on loads of medication? Like, I mean, me and Maria have custom seeing this. We have these people come into the hospital and they pull out a bag of medication, right? And here's the thing, when we empty out that bag of medication, we realize they have 2 or 3 of the same medication that they're taking all the time. And then they were never told that they need to take 1 bottle of that, and they never bothered to read it because they couldn't understand what was written on it. Right? So medication, like things like NSAIDs. NSAIDs are your aspirin, not the aspirin. Tylenol, Advil, Morphin, all those diclofenac, those are your NSAIDs. Those can have a significant problem in your gut. In fact, I don't use those medications for any more than 3 days on any of my patients, no matter how bad the pain, right? And 3 days, and the gut starts to be significantly affected. right? Hormonal changes. We did mention how estrogen can cause a problem with your gut, right? And chronic infections, or what is called dysbiosis. And this is an imbalance of the gut bacteria. Yes, you have to maintain that balance. This irritation weakens the intestinal lining. We mentioned it earlier, the leaky gut syndrome, right? Where toxins, bacteria, and undigested food particles can enter your bloodstream, triggering a systemic inflammation. Yes, and now the inflammation is in your blood. And you're wondering why you're getting these bacterial infections and viral infections so often, right? And I'm sure Maria can attest to this. The minute she started changing her nutrition, her exercise, and everything, she noticed that her risk of developing just a common cold declined significantly. Or when she did get it, it lasted for a day and she was back on her feet and ready to go. Yes, she was in recovery mode, but it was a quick response. So during perimenopause, why does this worsen during menopause? Right? During perimenopause and menopause, levels of estrogen and progesterone decline. We mentioned this earlier. Maria mentioned the perimenopause phase where you have this decline in these hormones, right? These hormones have protective effects, right, on gut lining, inflammatory response, sleep quality, and fat storage. Fat metabolism. So your metabolism goes down, which means you're more prone to store more fat, right? Because you're not burning off that energy because of the decrease in hormones. So when these hormone levels drop, the gut becomes more vulnerable to infection. That's why when you're going through menopause, you're more likely to get the common cold and other types of infection. Your immune system becomes more reactive, right? And especially women, you're more prone to things like bloating. I know you've been through your periods, but now it's happening while you're going through menopause. IBS syndrome. This is called irritable bowel syndrome. If you didn't know what we said when we said IBS, right? And systemic inflammation. What it means by systemic inflammation, if you're diabetic or you have any medical problems, you are more prone to, if you get a cut, it doesn't heal as well, right? And that's leading to ulcers and other formations. So we started off by Maria asking me, what does gut and sleep have to do with each other? So let's dive into that. Why are there sleep problems, right? So this inflammation that's happening for this overwhelm of too much carbohydrates, too much sugars, too much highly processed foods, right? Not enough fruits and vegetables. Yes, fruits and vegetables is a cure. So easy, yeah? Right? This leads to cytokine interference. What are cytokines? This is an pro-inflammatory response. So we heard about probiotics and all this stuff. So this is what they're talking about. These cytokines are called IL-6 and TNF-alpha. And there's a whole bunch of other names they like to put in them. So, but let's not get into that. If you want to be a scientist like that, give me a buzz. These chemicals can disrupt melatonin. We've heard all about melatonin production, which interfere with natural circadian rhythms. They're always talking, if you need better sleep, take melatonin. Sorry about that. And this causes a result in trouble falling asleep. So you're waking up at 2 and 3 o'clock in the morning and you don't know why. And you're not getting restorative sleep. These are all problems caused from declines in melatonin. So here's an interesting fact. 70%, again, this big number, 70% of your melatonin is made in your gut, not just in your brain. Yes, there's melatonin in your brain, but the gut is a major producer. I bet you didn't know that. I didn't know that until just now, right? And I read this earlier, and it just dawned on me what I just said. I'm like, oh my God, I need to get better gut, right? Inflammation damages the gut lining and the
Yes.
microbiome, reducing melatonin output. Less melatonin, shorter, poorer quality of sleep. So now you're seeing it's getting there somewhere. And we mentioned serotonin earlier. Remember? That's one of the hormones that the gut produces. So this inflammation causes an effect on the tryptophan, serotonin, melatonin pathway. So tryptophan is normally converted to serotonin and then to melatonin. So I don't know. In the US just went through, well, they have their Thanksgiving Day. And we know it in Christmas when you eat turkey, right? Turkey is rich in tryptophan. And after you eat turkey, you want to just fall asleep, right? It's not the overwhelming amount of carbohydrates, it's actually the turkey. So what happens? The turkey, the tryptophan, gets converted to serotonin, gets converted to melatonin, and what do you want to do? Fall asleep. See how it works? Right. So this is getting disrupted, right? And that disruption causes what's called a kynurenine pathway, where the tryptophan goes on a different pathway, reducing the amount of serotonin and melatonin. What does this lead to? Not just sleep disturbances. You're thinking just sleep. No, anxiety, mood swings. You ever wonder why you're tripping off? Well, all of a sudden you're crying and the next moment you're happy as ever or you're angry? There you go. That mood swing might be caused from that serotonin pathway, right? Here's the last thing I want to mention. All of this, the stress, the lack of sleep, the melatonin decreases, the serotonin changes leads to, what do we call it? Weight gain. Oh my goodness. It's all linked back to weight gain. So this contributes to weight gain, especially in the menopausal woman. And all these overlapping mechanisms, which includes insulin resistance, which is chronic inflammation. Remember, we mentioned that insulin is converted in the gut, very important. This insulin resistance leads to more fat storage, especially around the belly, right? So that extra love handle you're holding on to suddenly becomes two, and you're wondering why, right? Combined with the estrogen decline, which slows your metabolism, and suddenly you're gaining weight, right? And then this causes cortisol dysregulation, which causes chronic low-grade stress. So you're constantly stressed out, right? And this causes the cortisol levels to be constantly elevated. And then you go into the hospital and they check your cortisol and they tell you you have some random disease, right? And you're like, what? But what does it cause? What does cortisol stress levels being high cause, right? I'm sure you've heard this before. Fat storage. Again, we back to the fat, the visceral fat, but this time it's not around the belly, that love handle anymore. It's around the organs. That's the dangerous fat. That's the one you don't want to have, right? It causes sugar cravings, right? It causes muscle breakdown. And guess what? That's not a good thing. Muscle breakdown because of the cortisol levels and a decrease in exercise. Remember, you're not feeling the energy. You're feeling kind of depressed, right? That means your blood sugar levels is not being worked well and your heart health declines. So high cortisol worsens sleep, right? Causes worsening of weight gain, right? And this leads to, what do you call it? A vicious cycle. Imagine that keeps going round and round and round. And a year later, you're 50 pounds heavier and you're wondering why. So the third thing is dysbiosis and metabolic dysfunction. We mentioned dysbiosis earlier and a bit of metabolic dysfunction, right? And then hormonal recycling gone wrong. Remember, we mentioned the estrobolome, right? And we spoke quite a bit about that earlier, right? And this causes estrogen dominance or estrogen deficiency. So one extreme to the next, right? And if you're in a perimenopause, there's estrogen deficiency, which means you might get the estrogen dominance initially, and then suddenly it drops off to the deficiency, and you go through these extreme changes from the estrogen, right? And we can talk more about those extreme changes. In fact, that's why we're here. Call up me and Maria, or call up Maria especially, and she can have these conversations with you and figure out where you are, right? Both of these imbalances causes weight gain, fluid retention, and fat redistribution. So And then I gotta mention again, remember the gut-brain immune axis? Again, this comes into play. When you're affecting that, they're causing the inflammation in the gut, that affects your central nervous system. Remember, they're connected by the vagus nerve, right? But when we're stimulating the cortisol in the gut, it's triggering the vagus nerve to now tell the brain that you're under stress, and now the brain starts to produce cortisol, right? And this causes an increase in mood dysregulation and sleep cycle interference. Can you see why this is such a vicious cycle? It goes one thing leading to the next, leading to the next, leading to the next, and suddenly you're in a downward spiral and wondering why, right? So here's a feedback loop. Gut inflammation, sleep disturbance, high cholesterol, fat storage, mood issues, gut disruption, and it goes over and over and over. And several years later, what are you doing? So what do we want to prevent? We want to prevent this chain reaction. We want to decrease the gut inflammation by improving our nutrition and exercise. Truly important. Exercise is excellent for stress management. Nutrition, proper nutrition leads to better gut health. And here's a bonus. If you improve your gut health, you can reverse aging. They have proven it, especially if you go on a vegetarian diet for short spaces of time. You don't have to be all vegetarian like Maria is. I'm not. But every once in a while, like 2 months in a year, you decide to go on a vegetarian stint, right? Stick to the vegetarian diet. You can actually reverse aging, right? And reduce up to 5 years of your life. This has been proven, right? So we want to avoid dysbiosis. We want to avoid the leaky gut and the cytokine issues. And we want to reduce there's a reduction in microbial diversity. This is super important for the gut. That diversity, not the bad bacteria, the good bacteria. Once it's a healthy gut, it pushes away the bad bacteria and takes care of your microbiome. All of these things lead to sleep disturbances. Why is it important to the menopausal woman? You're going through these hormonal shifts. If your gut is not healthy, how can you, this is why you feel so overwhelmed. In addition to the hormonal shifts, now you have this unhealthy gut, all these extra inflammatory responses, and suddenly you're not doing well. So if we can help you improve that gut, if we can get you into that healthy state, you get better sleep, easier weight management, so you're not putting on weight as you get older, fewer hot flashes and mood swings. And Maria can attest to this. Even her husband said he noticed it, right? And reduced cravings. And I got that information from her directly, by the way. She's given me the frown, but she told me that. And reduced cravings and improved energy, right? So that is how the gut affects your sleep and how that inflammation can lead to so many disruptions in your daily routine. Back to you, Maria.
Thanks again for that, Dr. Khan. Very, very informative. And I want to just say that this menopausal, I call it sometimes, we say a transition, but sometimes it feels like a storm. It feels like a real storm. You're just getting a little break and then bam, something else occurs. So it is so imperative that we take our health into our hands. So let's talk lifestyle here. Stress is one of the biggest gut disruptors. High cortisol shuts down digestion. We know cortisol from what we've spoken of before and some of the topics we've done before. Just a gentle reminder, cortisol is what we call the stress hormone. And what it does, when we are stressed out, cortisol levels rise and it shuts down digestion and it alters the microbiome in our guts. So that's where the breath work, the mindfulness, and all these come in to help us. So here are some tips. Movement matters. What can help with these disruptions in our system? Daily walks have been shown to improve gut diversity. You don't need a boot camp to get the gut microbiome in order. Just be consistent. So here's a tip. One of the things I do, I mean, everybody, our lifestyle is not the same, but one of the things I do, I get up early in the morning, and I've given myself this routine within the last 6 months or so. I get up about 3. That is my time for relaxing. Well, I would say my meditation time, my prayer time. After that time, I put on one of those walking videos, and I do at least a 15 minutes in the morning and start my day. Or I might just do high intensity training for about 20 minutes in the morning time before I go to work. And you wouldn't believe that makes a whole lot of difference. So you develop your routine, something that can work within your lifestyle. So the walking, I put on a walking video, 15 minutes can amount just walking and doing those exercises can amount to 2,000 steps, as simple as it may seem. So walking is very important. So here are some tips. Eat your biggest meal earlier in the day. Avoid caffeine after 2 p.m. because what does caffeine do? It's a stimulant. So it can go on and cause you to be up at night, late at night and early in the morning. Prioritize sleep and gut restorative routines like herbal teas, like the green teas, and the magnesium glycinate, my preferred choice, which helps a lot with relaxation, and it's better. I've played around with that and listened to a number of advice, and what I found is that 2 to 3 hours before bedtime, you take your magnesium. So if your bedtime is 10 o'clock, you take it around 7, and before you know it, it starts to kick in. Some people cannot take the tablet form or the capsule form, so some people take it in the powdered form. But however, whichever way you decide to take it, it will help once you are consistent. So there's a lady, her name is Cherie, she's 47, and she said she went from 3 hours of sleep to 7 hours a night, and she didn't take sleeping pills. All she did was to change her gut routine. She added more fiber, cut back on sugar, and she stopped eating late at night. My routine exactly. And her anxiety dropped, her energy level came back eventually, and finally she felt more like herself. These are some very simple changes. Sometimes we think exercise and people start to get all, I don't think I can make that, but make small steps. Make very small steps, and those small steps would make very, very big changes in our system. So here's what we know. Your gut isn't just about digestion, it's a major player in our hormonal health, particularly as we are going through this perimenopause, menopause, postmenopause, this transition. Balancing your gut, support your hormones, and feel like yourself again. So top 3 steps again, a reminder: start a gut-friendly food journal. What this would help you do, it will help you track what you eat and how you feel after you eat them, so you would know what works for you and what doesn't. 2, add a daily fermented food or a prebiotic-rich veggie to your normal eating regime. 3, identify and reduce one trigger food this week. It may be sugar, it may be dairy, or it may be gluten. And most importantly, stay curious. Ask yourself, what else could my gut be doing for my brain, my mood, and my bones? Yes, bones. So as we mentioned earlier, for staying to the end, we have an amazing surprise for you. Our approach is all about you. Are you fed up of struggling with menopause, weight, and hormone imbalance? Well, our Radiant Balance method may be what you have been waiting for. We'll start with a hormone harmony assessment, then create a nourish and thrive plan that's perfect for you. Most importantly, we'll find joyful movement exercises you genuinely enjoy, exercises that you choose that are good for you, that would make you or prompt you to exercise even more. So fitness becomes a pleasure instead of a burden, not a chore. This is a group support program tailored for your particular need and your goals. So whether you might be a person struggling with other health issues, like let's say you have arthritis, you might be diabetic, hypertensive, the program would be individually geared to help you. You may be anemic, right? So this program is tailored to your unique needs and goals. So we are here to simplify the process, provide expert guidance, and share you on along the way. Now, this program isn't for everyone. It's for women who are ready to commit, who are willing to invest in themselves, and who are ready to take action and to take back their life. If you're looking for a quick fix, I want to say on the onset, this is not for you. We don't deal with quick fixes here. This is actually for women wanting to make a lasting change, a change that does not affect them now, just now, or this year, or the next year, but for the rest of your life. So if you're ready to reclaim your radiance, balance your hormones, and love your body again, I invite you to apply to our Reclaim Radiance program. The application is on this page. It's straightforward, but be honest with your answers so that we can, Dr. Khan and I, see if it's a good fit for you. Completing this application is a statement that you are ready, really ready to start a journey of rediscovery, that is rediscovering your energy and your confidence. So apply to secure your spot now. And we want to thank you again for coming on tonight. Thank you for watching, those of you who are not on the live program. And I believe menopause can be a time of empowerment. It could be a time of knowledge. And I'm excited to support you and support myself through this journey as well. I look forward to reviewing all the applications, ladies and gentlemen. Even if the gentlemen want to join this program as well, God Balance is for everyone. So this is for today's episodes of the Hormone Code. So I am Nurse Maria, Nurse Joseph, and I want to thank you all for spending this time with us. We went a little over the time we usually go, but not too long gone. And any questions again, just before we go, I'd like to open the floor so you can throw any questions, especially tonight's topic, to Dr. Khan. So the floor is yours, ladies. Ask away. You can unmute your mic and ask the question. Ms. Cavallo.
Yeah, Donna, good night.
Good night, welcome.
Really appreciated the topic, but I have one question. Some people, like in my case, cannot really use the probiotic. I get very gassy, whether it's in the form of tablets or in the form of food. And because of this, I'm always afraid of using the probiotic. So, and I also read that there's something called prebiotic. Is there a difference, and would it still cause that problem of gassiness and bloatiness? Thanks.
Well, what I can say is that you don't necessarily have to take a tablet form of probiotics or prebiotics. A lot of this stuff you can get from just your nutrition, right? And it's not a one-off thing. So you could be taking these probiotics, as we mentioned earlier. We mentioned the kombucha. Kombucha is a drink that's full of probiotics. But you could be taking that religiously every day and then eating a whole bunch of highly processed foods and getting no results. So is that bloating coming from the probiotics itself, or is it coming from something else? Right? And it gets very complicated when it comes to the gut because you're putting lots of stuff in there. So what does it cause? And if a new thing put in there is a probiotics and that's causing the bloating, is it interacting with what's already in the gut? And that's another thing, is the interactions okay? So that comes into, is your gut health up to par? No, to get your gut health up to par, it takes a little bit of time. It's not an overnight process. It's a little bit of time of working on the gut and putting in the right things and replacing it with healthy meals, right? And that can lead to you then later on, maybe once your gut is healthier and it's feeling good and you've put all these things in place, you go and you try the probiotics again, and you might say, oh, but it's working now because maybe there's not an interaction there. So the complexities of it make it hard to say, is it just the probiotics or is prebiotics going to be better? You might get exactly the same reaction. Also, the quality of the probiotics. Where do you get it from? Who do you use? And there's a variety of qualities. Most of the companies have a very small requirement for creating an ingredient. So is the type of ingredients good enough? We've seen this in medicine. We use one medication from one company, and then we use another medication from another company, and it's totally different. The person has an allergic reaction or they reacted in a different way we didn't expect, right? And this can happen all the time. So I would say in a case like this, evaluation, like doing what we're offering earlier with fill out the form and let's have a chat. All of that is important because there's lots here we can unpack for you.
Ms. Caballo, does that answer your question?
Yes. You hear me?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. Yes, it have. I could understand the interaction with probably the food that I'm eating and things like that. So yes, it have. Thank you.
You're welcome. Any other questions, ladies or gentlemen, before we close out? Okay. Okay then, well, that means we did a good job, I must say. So thank you, ladies, again for coming on tonight. And what we want to do, as I always ask, invite a friend, because these topics are timely, they are helpful, and then you can go over these topics again and get involved with what we are doing, as well journal a lot of the things that you probably missed out, write it down and go them over, right? It will be helpful. And so we bring this program to you, and we would like you to invite a friend, invite someone who you know may be going through this process of what I call self-rediscovery and realignment to our whole system. And this program might be what they just very well need to get their life into a more balanced way. So thanks again. Thank you again, Dr. Khan, for all your wonderful.
Bye,
You're
everyone.
welcome, Michelle, and everybody else. Welcome. You took a lot of notes. Ms. Caballo said she took a lot of notes. You're welcome, ladies. Welcome.
Have a pleasant evening.
Pleasant evening, everybody.
All right, love you. Bye, everyone.
Good evening, Nicole.